My secret keeper, the secret keeper of the Republic of Turkey. President Erdoğan used these expressions for him during his term as Prime Minister. 11 years later, as he entrusted him with the position of Minister of Foreign Affairs, everyone was talking about this secret-keeping civil servant, Hakan Fidan. Although he appeared on paper as a civil servant during his 13 years as the Undersecretary of the National Intelligence Organization, MIT, he had a say in Turkey's foreign policy. He was determining with the Minister of Foreign Affairs whether Turkey would enter the war in Syria. He was also among those who decided which groups in Syria would be armed and how. He played a role in the Russia-Ukraine war negotiations and facilitated steps towards normalization with countries like Egypt and Israel. He was also the main protagonist of the peace process that Turkey is still debating. He was equipped with a shield of legal immunity. Within the borders of Turkey, no one could touch Hakan Fidan unless the president gave permission. Not even an investigation could be initiated, let alone a lawsuit. Hakan Fidan was born in 1968 in Ankara as the child of a civil servant father. He was one of the 4 children in the family. He had 2 sisters and 1 brother. He spent his childhood in Hamamonu, Ankara. He was the eldest of 4 children, the older brother to 2 sisters and 1 brother. Perhaps that's why he was somewhat reserved. It is said that no one ever saw him playing games as a child. In his youth, one of his biggest hobbies was cinema. He was a good film enthusiast. In 1986, he studied electronics at the Non-Commissioned Officers School. In the early 1990s, he went to Europe and served in NATO. He married early. He had 2 sons. In 2001, he resigned from the Turkish army with the rank of non-commissioned officer. Afterwards, he embarked on an extremely interesting academic career. The title of his thesis at Bilkent University was The Role of Intelligence in Foreign Policy. After leaving the military, Hakan Fidan began to fully concentrate on intelligence. In 2006, the title of his doctoral thesis at the same university was The Use of Information Technologies in the Verification of Diplomatic Agreements in the Information Age. Between 2001 and 2003, he undertook various international assignments. He served in various roles at the United Nations Institute for Disarmament in Geneva, in the UK, Germany, and even Australia. In 2003, he returned to Turkey. He was appointed as the head of the Turkish Cooperation and Coordination Agency, abbreviated as TİKA. His relationship with the AK party began in this way. He provides significant support, with one aspect being cultural support. We have activities, particularly focused on the promotion of Turkish language teaching and strengthening Turkish language departments. Today, here in Pristina, we are examining one of our activities on site. The Turkish public first heard the name Hakan Fidan in 2003 during his presidency of TİKA. His close circle describes him as a true workaholic and a vault of secrets. He is known to be very attached to his family relationships, especially to his mother and grandmother. Interestingly, many people who provide information about Hakan Fidan do not want to share these details in front of the cameras. Nevertheless, they emphasize that he has not engaged in favoritism or nepotism since his tenure at TİKA. They claim that he often says, "Many of our friends will be upset, but let it be sacrificed for the state." After his time at TİKA, Hakan Fidan began his period as Deputy Undersecretary of the Prime Ministry. Here he particularly served as an advisor to the then Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdoğan on security matters. He was appointed as the Deputy Undersecretary of the National Intelligence Organization, MIT, with the recommendations of the then Foreign Minister Ahmet Davutoğlu and the initiative of Beşir Atalay. However, this was not easy either, because the appointment of a non-commissioned officer who had left the military to such a position in MIT drew reactions from the military. Until that day, only soldiers with the rank of Lieutenant General were appointed to this position. What was interesting was that, despite not having an intelligence background, Hakan Fidan emphasized how Turkish intelligence should be in his doctoral and master's theses, as if he had anticipated this. With Hakan Fidan's arrival at MIT, the long-standing struggle between the police, intelligence, and MIT resumed. Until then, MIT was an intelligence organization under the command of the military. Figures like Demirel, Özal, and even Çiller attempted to dominate MIT, but none could penetrate the military's armor, and all remained merely in words. As a result, for years, the police and intelligence were strengthened and seen as an alternative. In fact, after the process of criminalization, the police and intelligence were, technically, made more equipped than MIT. Now, within MIT, a brand new restructuring was being undertaken by order of the Prime Minister. Turkey first heard the voice of Hakan Fidan, who was known for never taking notes, not having the word forget in his vocabulary, and being successful in psychological analysis despite not having formal training in psychology. In a secretly recorded audio tape leaked online, However, the audio recording was leaked in 2011. However, it was understood that this recording, which appeared to be the fifth meeting, was conducted in 2009. According to the audio recording, it was alleged that MIT Undersecretary Hakan Fidan met with both Öcalan and PKK representatives under the instruction of then Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdoğan and in the capacity of a special envoy. It was among the claims that the meeting held in Oslo, the capital of Norway, as the coordinating country, was attended by the then Deputy Undersecretary of the Prime Ministry, MIT Undersecretary Fidan, MIT Deputy Undersecretary Afet Güneş, Mustafa Karasu from KCK, and PKK members Sabri Oke and Zübeyir Aydar. Currently, only the HDP, whom we have permitted, and previously members of the BDP have gone to the island. Additionally, our intelligence organization is going there. Apart from this, there have been instances where we have sent those who needed to go for international or health-related reasons with our permission.
In 2010, Hakan Fidan officially became the head of the National Intelligence Organization, MIT. He restructured MIT.
He even transferred key figures from the police intelligence to MIT.
A year after the Oslo audio recording was leaked, an event on February 7, 2012, the day Prime Minister Erdoğan was to undergo surgery, marked the beginning of a major conflict that extends to today.
Chief Prosecutor Sarıkaya was summoning MIT Undersecretary Hakan Fidan and 4 MIT officials to testify as suspects within the scope of the KCK operation. If you try to blame my undersecretary for news that appeared in the publications of the separatist terrorist organization, if you judge my undersecretary based on that, well, it is absolutely impossible for us to accept this.
In the fight against terrorism, what can we do? From where can we take more beneficial steps in terms of combating terrorism? These colleagues are fighting for this cause.
I mean, this is not only during Mr. Fidan's term. I initiated this work, this process, for the first time with Mr. Emre. He also came and went.
Now, when it is like this, it has become something that has clearly crossed the line. If, as a Prime Minister, I do not stand by an Undersecretary who is directly accountable to me, because I am the one giving him instructions. Well, if you are going to take someone, then take me. This was seen as FETÖ's first move in the process leading to a coup against the AK party and Erdoğan. On February 7th, there were active hours in Ankara and Istanbul.
Fidan was summoned to testify at the end of the workday.
He called the Prime Minister.
Erdoğan did not allow him to testify.
Following this development, which went down in history as the February 7th MIT plot, it also became clear that the main target was Erdoğan. Following the summoning of MIT Undersecretary Hakan Fidan to testify, the proposal to amend the MIT law presented to the parliament was passed into law with 266 votes in favor against 63 votes against in the General Assembly. Changes were rapidly made to the law. According to the 26th article of the MIT law, conducting investigations on MIT personnel was made subject to the Prime Minister's permission. While these events were unfolding in Turkey, the name Hakan Fidan also started to be discussed worldwide. The Israeli Defense Minister of the time, Ehud Barak, had consistently targeted Hakan Fidan with criticism since the day he took office. He accused Fidan of being pro-Iranian. In the plot orchestrated by the federal members, all paths led to this point. Among the claims was that when they sat at the same table with Obama, Barack Obama addressed Hakan Fidan by name and used harsh sentences. Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Seymour Hersh described this meeting in his article dated April 4, 2014. Erdogan's aim at the meeting was to show Obama that the red line had been crossed. For this reason, he brought Fidan along with him. Erdogan wanted to include Fidan in the conversation. Fidan began to speak. However, Obama interrupted, saying they already knew what Fidan was going to say. Erdogan tried to include Fidan in the conversation a second time. But Obama interrupted Fidan a second time, saying they already knew what he was going to say. At this point, Erdogan angrily said, "But your red lines have been crossed." The expert added the following. According to Danilo's statement, Erdogan was wagging his finger at the president inside the White House. Then Obama pointed at Fidan and said, "We know what you're doing with the radicals in Syria." With the process of December 17th and 25, a brand new era began in Turkey. The struggle that had been ongoing for years between the MIT and the police was won. This time, the civilian government was on the side of the MIT. A major purge period began in police intelligence. The MIT became the main driving force of the investigation into FETÖ, referred to as the parallel structure. After the Syrian war began, it was alleged that the MIT conducted numerous operations both across the border and within the country in the field of intelligence. In January 2014, the claims that the weapons inside the 8 trucks stopped in Adana and heading to Syria belonged to the MIT would become the most shocking news of the agenda. This claim was also denied by the MIT. It was also among the claims that Hakan Fidan and his team intervened after many people were kidnapped by ISIS due to the Syrian civil war. It was alleged that Hakan Fidan and his team played a high-level role in the rescue and negotiation process of the 49 hostages kidnapped in Mosul. I consider it a duty to thank, on behalf of our nation, the members of the National Intelligence Organization and our Undersecretary, who made great efforts in these operations. Hakan Fidan, who was close enough to be a witness at the wedding of Erdogan's son behind closed doors, also took the surprising step of entering politics. On February 7, 2015, he resigned from his position at the National Intelligence Organization. The then Prime Minister Davutoglu welcomed the resignation positively. He was supposed to become a member of parliament. However, Erdogan did not share the same opinion. I do not view his candidacy positively. Upon returning from his trip to Saudi Arabia, the president responded to journalists' questions about Fidan by saying, "Now, we appointed him to such a position, and it was I who appointed him. If leaving is not allowed, then he should have stayed there and not left. Therefore, of course, I am disappointed," he replied. Not long after, Hakan Fidan withdrew his candidacy. He returned to his position at the MIT. Thus began the second Fidan era at the MIT.
Undoubtedly, the biggest crisis of the second term was the July 15th coup attempt. Fidan, after receiving intelligence that day around noon, personally went to the general staff, discussed the situation with Hulusi Akar, yet he drew criticism from the opposition for not detecting early on that a group within the military would attempt a coup. Undoubtedly, the decision made by Hakan Fidan and Hulusi Akar in that room on the day of the July 15th coup attempt played a significant role in uncovering the plot. Fidan did not attend the investigative commission established in the parliament after the coup attempt was suppressed and never gave a statement. Hakan Fidan's name also began to be mentioned in many steps taken in foreign policy. In countries like Egypt, Israel, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates, where relations had reached a breaking point, the normalization process was always achieved through backdoor diplomacy via intelligence officers. The meetings were conducted through these institutions. Activities in Syria and Iraq were increased day by day. Now, MIT had a new doctrine. It transformed from an organization that only gathered intelligence into one that also conducted operations abroad, or brought individuals to Turkey alive. The intelligence chiefs of the United States and Russia met in Ankara. The National Intelligence Organization hosted the meeting. In the war that broke out between Russia and Ukraine, intelligence once again came to the forefront. Prisoner exchanges and the grain agreement were all conducted with the accompaniment of MIT under the leadership of Hakan Fidan. The American and Russian intelligence chiefs met at the MIT headquarters, Kale, in Ankara. In this meeting, which our National Intelligence Organization President, Mr. Hakan Fidan, attended, there were the defense ministers and intelligence chiefs of Russia, Syria, and Iran. In this meeting, we exchanged views mutually. Perhaps the most talked about issue of recent times was the meeting with Syria. He went to Russia together with Hulusi Akar. He met with Syrian officials, with whom Turkey had not had any contact for 11 years. One of the main actors was Hakan Fidan. Perhaps due to his recent foreign policy moves, he was appointed as the Minister of Foreign Affairs in the new cabinet. Hakan Fidan, known as Erdogan's secretive confidant, made his voice heard for the first time in front of the cameras during the handover ceremony as the most intriguing figure of the cabinet. After my 13-year tenure at the National Intelligence Organization, which required heavy responsibility, I express my gratitude to the President for the trust and appreciation shown to me by appointing me to the equally responsible position of Minister of Foreign Affairs. He is now a Minister of Foreign Affairs, not behind closed doors or a closed curtain like before. On the contrary, he is in front of the cameras. One of the first things he did was to enter social media and open a Twitter account. He rolled up his sleeves and got straight to work. I swear on my honor and dignity before the great Turkish nation that I will protect the existence and independence of the state, the indivisible integrity of the homeland and the nation, the unconditional sovereignty of the nation, adhere to the rule of law, the democratic and secular republic, and the principles and reforms of Ataturk, and that I will not deviate from the ideal of ensuring that everyone benefits from human rights and fundamental freedoms within the understanding of social peace and welfare, national solidarity and justice, and from loyalty to the Constitution.